The longer I teach, the more I realize that the gift of teaching is that I get to cross paths with young people early in the career. I get to learn about their character, their dreams, their ambitions. And when it happens the right way, I get to see their lives unfold, their dreams become a reality. And if I'm really lucky, we stay in touch and some of those students become dear friends of mine. Jesse Smith is an internationally acclaimed tattoo artist and a friend. He joined my class this past Friday at VCU, sat down with us and talked to us about his story, how he began early work as a caricature artist at a theme park, coming to Richmond, carrying his portfolio around, going door to door, looking for work. How he built his own tattoo shops, how those tattoo shops grew into hiring multiple employees. His appearances on InkMaster, running the Richmond Tattoo Convention, and finding his voice as an artist. We get into conversations about artificial intelligence, our shared fears of what that means for our economy, the future for students. But most importantly, I just got to sit down with a friend and have a conversation that was much overdue. I will tell you that the person that Jesse is in front of the camera is exactly who he is behind the camera. His artwork is an extension of his authenticity, his grit, his determination and kindness. And that's the piece that I think we miss, that we forget. That just going out and being a decent human and making connections with other people is profoundly important in your success and your career. It's profoundly important in our future as a culture and a society. Jesse has always done those things with grace. He challenges taboos. He brings different forms of art together, and he has certainly left a distinct mark in the world. Jesse, thank you for your time. I got a ton out of it. I enjoyed it immensely, and I know the students did too. As always, remember to think louder. I actually first met Jesse here at VCU when he was starting out and I was just starting teaching. Jesse's gone on to have immense international fame. You are familiar with the show called InkMaster. Jesse has been on that show twice now. Jesse runs a tattoo shop up in Carytown called Loose Screw Tattoo, and he is also the host, really runs the Richmond Tattoo Festival here in Richmond, and he has really sought out to effect significant change in his industry. He's bringing together artists from all different backgrounds, not just tattoo artists, but fine artists, illustrators, designers, and he's really made a mark on this city as well as just nationally and internationally. So I want to introduce my friend and phenomenal artist, Jesse Smith. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So short drive for you from, were you up at your studio today?
Yep. I just actually drove. Yeah, it was like 5 minutes away.
Great. So we're lucky to have you here. As I told you before, this kind of class, it's a business class, creative commerce. And I like to start with a question, how did you make your last dollar? What was the last thing that you did to kind of generate some revenue?
Well, I did a tattoo yesterday, and that's how I got my last dollar, I guess, thus far.
So you're still in the trenches. You tattoo pretty much every day?
Not every day. I tattoo about 3 days a week, and then I spend the other couple days doing logistical stuff for the tattoo shop or for the tattoo convention.
I want to come back to that in a minute, but let's frame that against how did you make your first dollar? Where did you start?
I was in the military for 3 years back in '96, and I actually drew caricatures of Busch Gardens. So I would say that's how I made my first dollar. But probably the more interesting story is when I moved to Richmond, and I remember, I didn't have a job doing art or anything like that, and I walked up and down Broad Street, and this was before the internet, and I had my little portfolio on my back, and I just went to every store and I asked everybody if they needed art. And I don't know if you remember Music R Us.
No.
Well, anyway, it was like this little DJ store, and I drew this like little ant DJing, and that guy, like, I think he paid me $35, and he plastered it all over Richmond. It was in every newspaper, like everything, for $35. But I was always trying to figure out how to make money off of my art. So
that's pretty wild. So your story is so much like mine, where when I went to New York and I had my portfolio and I was wearing like a suit and, I was so out of place and out of context. But your willingness to kind of go do that, to put yourself out there and just say, you need art, I've got art, this is what I do.
Yeah.
What did your portfolio look like back then?
I mean, it was a lot of tattoos because I was tattooing at the time. So, like, I was still making money, but that's the story I remember where I was like proactively going out of my way to make money and do something and kind of get infused into Richmond at some capacity. I didn't really have any clients in Richmond. I had been established out in Newport News because I was tattooing all my buddies in the military and stuff like that. And that was relatively easy. But when I moved to Richmond, it was almost like a restart. So it was like, how am I going to start making money here? I don't have any clients. You're handing out business cards everywhere. You're showing your portfolio everywhere. Um, so yeah, that was kind of, to me, that felt like a fresh start as an artist, you know?
It's interesting you're talking about like having to restart, and what I start thinking about is you had a community of sorts in Newport News. You came to Richmond, you kind of knew nobody, right?
Right.
And that's one thing about tattooing that I see. We're having this big conversation with artificial intelligence and technology, and your industry for now is somewhat insulated. I'm seeing technology come along that's pretty amazing, but
Yeah.
because it's an artifact, you're working with a person and it's a person-to-person connection. So, um, what changes do you see on the horizon for your industry and
Man,
where
let
it's
me
going?
go in this direction right
Sure,
from the
yeah.
get-go. I honestly am not worried about, a robot or AI taking my job. What I'm worried about is AI taking my clients' jobs. So, like, if my clients can't afford to get tattooed because their job no longer exists, that's where I think the struggle is going to come in. And I'm very much concerned about economic collapse due to the fact that people aren't going to have ways of bringing in money. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't want to be a doom and gloom guy, but I don't see, a future where we don't figure out a solution to that problem.
Yeah, and I agree. And so I think that you'd find resonance with a lot of the students in here that they're concerned about their futures and the financial ability to support themselves, to make
Yeah,
money, not just in the arts, like it's everywhere.
yeah,
And we had a really interesting conversation following our last speaker. I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed the questions, and there's a lot of things about okay, if you go out and you're replacing somebody who does art because someone doesn't want to do it or they can't do it, and they're flippant about it, the same artist turns around and says, "Well, I'm going to replace the lawyer with Chat GPT," and
sure,
like that's a cyclical thing that.
yeah,
So what happens with the economy when we're not paid for our talents? And
right.
so I'm with you. It's a real concern, and I don't have any answers. Um, but you feel currently within certainly the world of tattoos like it's not the direct end of your job, but it's the people with the financial capacity to continue to get tattoos because it's more of a want than a need.
Yeah, I mean, there's another piece of the pie too. Is so you've got two different types of artists in the world, and probably everything in the middle. But the two extremes I see are your illustrators who kind of create from their brains and they create everything out of nowhere, and then you've got your reproductive artists, the people who copy portraits, stuff like that, and then of course everything in between, people who use reference to draw and all that. In the tattoo world, we have that as well. Probably more people leaning in the reference side of things and so now what they can do is they can sit there and say, I want to be a new school artist or I want to do cartoons. So I can just AI cartoons. If I know how to apply that perfectly, which a lot of people do, essentially they could be a competitor of me who's spending a lot of time drawing out of my head. So that's a concern I have as well. And I've actually been doing a lot of traveling lately and tattooing with a lot of younger artists and there's this new school guy. He does absolutely amazing work. And everywhere I go, I always ask people about their process. Like, how do you create what you create, and what techniques are you using? And this particular individual does a lot of AI, and essentially he goes and makes these cool cartoon things in AI, and then he tattoos them flawlessly. And if you look at his portfolio, it's very cohesive. It looks great. And so if you're online and you're looking for a tattoo artist who's trying to get cartoons and you see his portfolio online, you see no difference really. And if anything, maybe his looks better because he's got all the light sources perfect and stuff like that. So that's a bit concerning as well, you know.
Yeah, I imagine that you've been ripped off plenty over the years.
Sure.
I talk to us a little bit about New School. What does that mean to you in your style, your approach? Where were you kind of in the development of New School? I'd love to hear the story about that.
Yeah, so I used to be a skater and I did graffiti, Saturday morning cartoons, all that stuff. That was all the stuff that kind of inspired me. And then when I got into the tattoo world, there was already this genre that was boiling up. It was called New School. And so then I just got labeled into being a new school tattoo artist and just rolled with it. And I would say that new school existed before I got there. But if you ask other people, not myself, because I don't see this, from an outside, it's like, someone asking you if you're getting taller or getting older or look better or whatever. I don't really see myself like that. But from the outside, people have said that I've shifted the genre. I've kind of I've took it to a different place. So.
So it's a nice thing they're saying about you and kind of being at the forefront of a directional change with what you're doing. I'll tell you what I see in your work from knowing you from over the years. You're talking about this threshold of people working from reference, which a lot of people do. People working from imagination. Your work has always been on that end of the spectrum. You're drawing from your head. You're creating these characters. And what's really compelling about what you do is you are actually telling a bigger story. And, maybe you can talk about that a little bit, but from person to person, your characters carry your story. So think about that. If you're a tattoo artist, someone comes in and they've got a question about what do they want and everything else. It's like, well, I want a picture of this. You're getting commissioned to be you, to make work by you that looks like you, and you're interjecting like this whole other narrative that you've then taken into other places too. So what is that? Where does that come? That's I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, so I this all kind of started right around 2009. I think I'd been tattooing for about 10 years at that time, and I had gotten all the accolades. I'd gotten all the trophies. I've been, won all the, been in every magazine, all the highest accolades I could have in the tattoo industry. I had a waiting list of like 3,000 people.
Wow.
So I was kind of in a position where I could, shift, lose half of the people and still be able to keep myself fed. And so what had happened is I started getting really like kind of bored and disenchanted and just kind of like felt like I was kind of going through the motions. Someone come in and they say, I want a rabbit tattoo, and I draw some rabbit, and they'd be happy and they'd walk out the door and I'd put it in my portfolio and that was it. But I wanted more depth in my work. So what I did is I created this fictitious continent called Carcass, and it's located off the west coast of the Galapagos Islands. And essentially, all my characters live in that space. So if I tattoo you and I tattoo a rabbit on you, and I might tattoo a squirrel on someone else, in Carcass, they may be friends, they may be enemies, they may be lovers, whatever it is. So all these like kind of stories start connecting, and you may be connected to another person and not even realize it. You're connected via the artist, but you're also connected via the story. So it was just more of to keep myself entertained.
It takes it to a different place. And one of the things I've tried to talk to the students about is that, you're the high water mark has been and always will be your novel point of view, your ideas and your stories. Like it lives above the craft, right?
Sure.
And I'm looking out at these students, and we have people want to go into animation and comics and storytelling. You all that registered what Jesse just said, right? He's world building through a form where we don't see that through tattoos and individual people who are out there who are connected in ways they don't even know of. That's very powerful stuff. And I watch you all through your concept drawing classes design characters and tell stories and everything else. That's a pretty interesting point of view to bring into a place where that's not the standard.
Yeah.
If I can back up a little bit, I want to put it into the wheelhouse for these students. And so you had your portfolio, you had this kind of grit to go out and go from one project to the next. And I mean, you probably didn't even know what you were asking for. I have art like you were asking for commissions.
Yeah.
You probably didn't even have the name for it. Can you pay me? I'll do design work, illustration work, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
What's the next step from there into, did you get an apprenticeship or did you work at a tattoo shop? How did you learn that craft and that trade?
I've always been a very motivated person and a very just a driven person. I always have to be doing something. Excuse me. And so I'm just like, I'm in the military. I'm drawing caricatures of bush gardens. I'm sifting the circles of artistic thinking people and just hanging out with them. And eventually I stumbled across this guy named this guy named Carlos, who had just been released from prison, and he was tattooing with a little ghetto gun out of his house. And we just became good friends. I would draw with him. He would draw with me. Never expected to be a tattoo artist. And then one day he was like, "Hey, you want to do a tattoo?" And I was like, "Sure." So he taught me how to make a ghetto gun, and I just went home and started tattooing. I tattooed a couple guys from the military, and they just started lining up at the door. So I would do tattoos, every other day at my house while I'm drawing caricatures on the weekends and still doing the military stuff.
Amazing. Anybody in here working at King's Dominion doing caricatures or airbrush? Nobody? My first job was airbrushing T-shirts at King's Dominion. So,
Yeah,
and there was the caricature artist versus the airbrush. We didn't really have a rivalry, but there was the
that's
two
awesome. When
camps.
did that happen?
I, my memory's so bad, but it was high school, college, like right in
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Because I did that as well. I did that
At
while
King's Dominion?
I did airbrushing while I was going to school at VCU.
But could
And
you play the national anthem on your airbrush?
no, I was not great at airbrushing. I mean, I airbrushed in the mall and I did like portraits and stuff like that, but I don't know. I didn't, airbrushing was it's a tough tool,
Yeah,
very tough tool.
I ended up working airbrush a shop down in Chesterfield somewhere. I can't remember, Chesterfield Town Center or something like that. But connection through a connection, and there's so many things.
Was it Larry that was?
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked for Larry too.
All right.
That's awesome.
Small world.
I mean, back then there was only a few.
Yeah, there was great, man.
Yeah.
So do you know Martin Remy?
I don't think so.
Good friends with Larry. So
Okay.
um,
Well, is he in a band?
yes.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we know all the same people. So what's really interesting about that, and kind of translate that back out to students here, this willingness to kind of meet people and build relationships, and that leads from one thing to the next. I mean, I knew Martin and he knew Larry, and I ended up working at this mall because of it. So what branch of the military were you in? Army?
I was in the Army.
And
Can I branch off of what you're just saying?
sure, yeah.
That whole community thing is so important. I mean, when people say, "Oh, I didn't learn anything in college" and all this stuff, I would say one of the biggest things I learned in college was the people I met. I learned a lot from the students I was with. And then, of course, all those students kind of scatter out throughout the world in different jobs and stuff. And as they get older, they become leaders in those positions. And then you might, need to shift over linear or whatever. And having those connections is just super important.
Yeah.
I got a lot. That's what I got out of school. The teachers didn't teach me anything. I'll just I learned a lot from the teachers as well, but the students I think is where I learned the most.
No, I've got my own history with being a student at VCU and pros and cons, and so that's not why I made it look. I taught you for a moment, so it's
honor students.
no, Jesse already knew what he was trying to get, and he came through. And what was really cool about you coming back to school was you were already successful, right? And I don't know on the scale of where you are versus where you were.
Yeah.
You were already a successful tattoo artist, and there was something that you needed with the structure and the information, the community. What drove you? And this again, I'm not plugging the university or anything. I'm just, why go back and get more education when you were already kind of just going in a solid direction?
My vision was so I went to the military to get money to go to art school. That was my goal. And then while I was in the military, I learned how to tattoo. By the time I started art school, I didn't, that was right when I was walking up and down Broad Street. So I had no clientele.
Okay.
So I became quasi famous while I was in art school, doing the art stuff and everything like that. But even as I was getting those accolades, in my mind, I wasn't going to be a tattoo artist. I was just going to be an artist, and I was going to be a, multimedia illustrator like and that was the vision that we were being presented. We were going to work at Hallmark, doing Hallmark cards, and we were going to do magazine illustrations. This was the vision that was painted via VCU back then.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, that's probably the journey I'm going to go in. And by the time I graduated college, I had already kind of gotten so many people that were interested in what I was doing that it was like, well, I want to pull on this thread a little longer and see how far it can go.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a choice to go back to school. It was like I was kind of doing both at the same time.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's one of those things where, you know, some of the information that comes in when you're running a business is like, so often we run from the success, and like people, like they don't realize what they had. So you had this thing pulling at you, and it was just kind of demanding your attention at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your other business endeavors are the same thing. It takes so much momentum to start, and then the visualization I use is like it's like having a rope tied to an anchor, and you're trying to get it over the edge of the ship. And then once it does, it you stop having to push so hard, and it starts to pull you. It
Yeah.
requires your attention. Um, I want to go back to just again, there's huge gaps in what I know of your story, just because we don't get to talk as much as I would like. But
Yeah.
I remember you were working at Ghost Print Gallery,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you had a space there. So you went from tattooing in your house. Did you have a space between then and going? You already had a studio then?
Yeah, I think Ghost Spring Gallery might have been my like 13th shop that I'd
Okay.
worked at. I
Well,
mean, I went to I did a study abroad in London. I worked in a shop in London for a year. I worked out in Virginia Beach for a year. I worked out in Hampton for a couple of years. So I was, jumping around, doing a lot of traveling. I tattooed out in Florida for a little while, out in Texas for a little while. So, I was just jumping around and tattooing at different shops. So Ghost Print Gallery was like probably the place I felt like was my first real home.
mhm.
Um, because Thea, of course, is very open minded, and my style was never accepted in the earlier parts of my career. It was very talked down upon and very like kind of, a lot of people were trying to like push me down the whole time. When I started working with Thea, she was doing a crazy style too. And so we were just two weirdos doing tattoos in a gallery.
So to frame this, and that's a huge gap, 13 years. I want to ask a quick question about that. But
Yeah.
Ghost Print Gallery was up here on Broad Street, and Geraldine Duskin ran that. Well, she owned the space,
Yeah.
or leased the space, and you and Thea had your booth, your tattoo booth, set up in the gallery. So it was actually a lot of what you're doing with the Richmond Tattoo Festival, bringing these things together.
Yeah.
That was happening there too. Some amazing shows came through there,
Yeah.
and then we could see your kind of your chairs in the back and everything else. And
You had a show there.
I,
Yeah. Was
I
it
had
your
a
first solo show?
first solo show there,
First
yeah.
solo show there. Yeah.
But Thea Duskin, Geraldine's daughter, and uh, wonderful people. So that was really cool. And I remember getting to a place, you know, maybe some years later we talked, and that was probably the spot where you were super busy, you were kind of burned out, you're trying to figure out direction, and that's kind of the next step in your life that I know about professionally. At some point, you decided, like, I'm going to open my own shop,
Yeah.
right? So you had, like, what were the requisite pieces that you had? Like, that's such a wild ambition to me. Like, I'm gonna open my own shop where people do things. I'm going to train them, and they're working in my style, right?
No, that's not, well,
Okay,
that's not
then I'm
exactly
off on
right.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you open your shop and then you hire people and they can work in their own style. So
thank you. Sorry,
the
that's a
interesting
big
thing,
misstep there on my
yeah.
part.
The interesting thing about Loose Screw is a lot of people do think that it's like a new school tattoo shop, but I've got black and gray artists in there. I got color realism artists in there. Like there's a huge spectrum of artists in there. And I never try to like direct anybody towards my style. It's always how can I make them better at what they're doing?
So you're teaching too. You're a mentor. You're a teacher. You kind of bring people in.
Yeah.
So do you have an apprenticeship type of process where you walk people in? Are these established artists already? How do you bring a new artist into your shop?
Most of them are established, but yeah, we do apprenticeships every once in a while. But the apprenticeship stuff is a lot of times what we'll do is we have an intern program, and so the interns come in And the good ones, we kind of like ask them if they'd like to continue working there. And then they work there. Most of them want a tattoo. And we just kind of like feel it out. And for me to apprentice someone or have my shop apprentice someone, they need to have a good attitude. They need to have a good work ethic and they have to have a little bit of talent, which is honestly kind of rare. Most of the people that come through my shop have no work ethic, they have bad attitudes, and they can't draw.
They don't even have one of the things you're looking for.
I mean, it's pretty crazy the pool of people that want to be tattoo artists or want to be artists or want to be anything, and they just don't have any of the building blocks at all.
What do you think that allure is? Because I see that too. There's a lot of people who want to be artists who like the idea of being an artist.
Yeah.
But what is like the space in between? Like, okay, someone who wants to be an artist and missing those things. What is that to you in your process and everything else?
Well, I think it's one of those things where when you see the end, you don't realize everything that happens in the middle, you don't realize what's necessary to get there. It's like that's shiny and that's exciting, but all the stuff in between, the cutting your teeth is just not fun. I mean, I love drawing, but there's lots of times I'm drawing that I'm not enjoying it.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yeah. When your passion becomes your job,
Yeah.
it gets really, really difficult because the thing that you would escape to is now the thing that you're required to do all the
Sure.
time. I've been on the phone with you at times and you're sitting there prepping for the next day. You're designing tattoos on your iPad and you're picking up a call at 11 o'clock at night because you got something at eight in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things where a love of the process of the work is to me what drives me, not the having the thing at the end that's shiny.
Yeah.
And people see that, and even in the tattoo world, you see that's really been amplified. I mean, it looks really sexy on the outside, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of grit and sorry for the pun, but blood and things in between that
Blood,
make
sweat,
it work.
tears.
Yeah. Let me go back to talking about your shop a little bit because again, I don't know for you all, but to me, that's like that comes with you've got employees.
Yeah.
You have tax burdens. You have a lease to go through. You have advertising. You have marketing. You have hardware that you buy. Like there's risk in this where you as a solo entrepreneur didn't have the same risk, right?
Right.
So that's a huge leap of faith. And I think that everybody who makes something and puts it in the world, there's a moment where like I have to do this or I go do something else. So do you have a moment like that where that just became an undeniable path forward that you had to be willing to take that risk?
Honestly, I didn't know it was a risk. It was just this is something I want to do and I'm interested in doing it. And I just went. Then you start seeing all the little things, just like if someone wants to be a tattoo artist, they see the tattoo artist, they don't see all the stuff in the middle. So yeah, I mean, I didn't see the risk, and then once you get in it, you see the risk and you're like, oh wow, I'm responsible for 15 people. I'm responsible for way more than myself. And if they mess up, then that goes off on me. So yeah, it is a risk.
Yeah. I founded Legendeer, which you came out to one year, which we had a great time. And Legendeer to me was like my little business endeavor. And we're going to take people out on expeditions and go whitewater rafting, climb. Like if I could make a business and I could get to do whatever I wanted to do, what it would look like. And then I got out there and I was a nervous wreck every single moment of every single day. I was like, please don't die. Please don't, nobody die while we're out on these things. And being in charge of people, being responsible for people is not, it's not the fun part. Now you had to acquire a ton of skills. You had this vision to open the shop.
Yeah.
You had I would say probably a big buffer for you as you had a backlog of commissions and just reliable clients and things. So you had a revenue stream that was like, how do I make more with this, right? How do I lessen your burden and profit more at some point? What did you go through? What's the first thing that you had to find with your shop?
What do you mean?
Like, okay, so you want to open a shop. What's the very next step? What did you have to kind of move that piece forward?
You need a business license, business insurance, a bank account, all that stuff. And then you have to have a location, of course. Um, you have to have humans that are interested in the business that you're building. So I already had that piece. I had artists who were interested in working with me at the time. So yeah, went to the city, had to get permits, make sure that I could open a tattoo shop in Carytown. And the funny thing is, back then it was very taboo.
Right.
So like opening a shop wasn't super easy. You couldn't just pick a building and just open. There was a lot of red tape to go through. So, um, but yeah, honestly, a lot of it is just asking people, and then they guide you to the next direction, and then you just do that and go to the next one, and just keep on kind of sifting through the humans that know more about business than you do.
Yeah. So it's like you take action and you stumble, you trip, and you figure out the next thing,
Oh yeah,
and you respond to it. It's like, oh, I have to have a permit. I had no idea
sure.
that I had to have a permit to do this type of work. You get to that place, you have your store opening. Talk to us about that day. What, like, immediate success? A lot of problems in the beginning. Did you market that? Like, did you have a big unveiling? What was the open house kind of type of scenario?
I would say one thing I'm really bad about is overhyping things. Like to me, it wasn't a huge deal. It was like, okay, well, we just have another place to tattoo. But the smart business move is to overhype things. And I didn't realize that until I was in the NFT space. It's like I'm watching these projects like blow through the roof because they're essentially overhyping their project. And then whereas my project in a lot of these scenarios was more deep and more value and stuff like that. But because I wasn't overhyping it, I wasn't getting that rush. And so the thing that I learned is if you overhype it, what happens is you get a bunch of people that come in here, and then as that ceiling falls, it falls to here. If you don't overhype it, typically people will come in here and the ceiling may go up, but that's their starting value. Whereas if you can get people to come in, we'll just say, the NFT space was an easy one. People come in thinking your NFTs are worth $600, then, that's their base. Then it goes up or down from there. Whereas if I come in at what I think it's worth and it's like 300, then people think it's worth 300. This guy already seems more valuable, even though his project doesn't have any weight to it. So, anyways, no hope. I didn't do a grand opening or anything like that.
Okay. So you've got the shop, it's up and running. You've got these like even backing up further, you had all these people who are interested in working with you,
Yeah.
just relationships, and like you must have been testing like, hey, I'm thinking about opening my own shop.
Yeah.
Like you're talking to people about that and generating, oh man. So did that word of mouth kind of start to spread and people started approaching you? How did that work?
I mean, I opened the shop pretty much with a bunch of my friends. So it was four of us to begin with. It was one of my best friends from Florida. His name was Jason Steffen. It was another VCU alumni named Daniel Farron. And then there was this girl, another tattoo artist named Bex, that was local here. So I just opened up with them. So it was kind of like everything went. When I think back, I don't remember any major hurdles. The major hurdle that I remember being a business owner was the first thing I realized, which sounds super normal, is that not everybody thinks like you. Not everybody has the same level of quality, level of customer service. So I had three people working in my shop for the first time that were representing me, and everybody had their different idea of how they treat their clients. Are they ready for them when they walk in the door with their art ready on time, which is not normal. And I didn't know this until I opened my shop. But I had a time where one of my artists decided he wanted a tattoo with a machete on his hip and thought that was a good idea. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, you think you're gonna get attacked or something? So, I had to make these rules, and the rules were no machetes on your hip while you're tattooing. And just all these things, and all of a sudden you turn into this, authoritative guy. And it's like, I'm just trying to protect the artists, the clients, the employees, the administration, and then also protect myself, in
Yeah.
this scenario. So it turns into you thinking about more than just yourself in those scenarios.
Before you came in, I was talking to the students about trademarks and like the trademark is there to actually protect the customer, not the business, but your brand, the thing that, your reputation for your studio. So it's not
Yeah.
just you, it's actually an even bigger thing with Loose Screw Tattoo. you want people to have a certain experience and,
Sure.
and vision of what the quality is going on. Um, a lot of these things kind of come back to kind of where the students are, and you know, you're starting out, you're beating the streets, you kind of start this business and you launch into something where you've got employees. How many of you find that idea intimidating? Like the actual launch of business and getting into all the, I do too. It's hard stuff, and it's not our native kind of language of what we do. But even for business people, it's not like they all just are born knowing this stuff, right? So where art meets commerce is a place where all of you are going to have to look, and the tide is changing for sure. And what type of things do you think that, you know, we can't predict the future with AI or whatever comes after AI or whatever in the economy? I mean, you've got predictions that align with mine. Like, this is an economical, you know, game changer for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you were to talk to students about things that they need, not just to be artists, but to be creative people making their way through the world, what are some things that are just foundational skills and things that they need?
I think problem solving, work ethic, ambition, creativity. I think those are the big things. That's what my kid's 5 years old now. I don't care if he learns anything. I want him to learn how to problem solve. I want him to have a good work ethic. I want him to be kind, to people. And I think that those are like the base tools for, I think, almost everything. But as an artist, I think that you got to work. I mean, and you got to be okay with failing, because, I've failed more times than I've succeeded. Uh, if you could see all the times I've had an idea and I'm like, we're going to make $1 million, and then we don't make anything, or we lose money. It's like, that's happened tons of times, but every once in a while you hit at something and something works. So,
Well, I've watched you develop different things. I remember being up in your studio and you're working on, I don't want to disclose anything that you haven't put out there, but there's a table, ink storage or something.
oh yeah, yeah,
That was like, that's such a specific thing to your trade, but you've identified a problem and you're making a product.
and
And
that
you know,
flopped.
did it?
Yeah,
I thought that'd be cool for me,
I
man.
mean,
That
it's
was,
it's a good idea. The reason I think it flopped more was because I just didn't have the infrastructure in place to, produce or manufacture, store, and then get the product out. And that's a big thing. Bringing things in from China obviously is very difficult now, but even back then it was difficult. What really flopped for me was I was getting product coming in from China, and then the pandemic hit and I couldn't get product for a year. So
wow.
that just like kind of put me dead in the water. But yeah, I mean, I'm jumping into a world that I don't understand, and it's like, what's the worst thing that could happen? It flops, but
Yeah.
move
Well,
on to something else.
well, I mean, you're talking about things like even warehousing and shipping, and like there's layers to all of this
Yeah.
that gets really difficult. A lot of us work in a digital space, and you know, digital products, if you can have people value them, or the return on that is so much higher. You don't have the same storage, don't have the same issues with shipping, and you know, there's a lot of ways to kind of profit off of that too. So you're now running the Richmond Tattoo Festival. You've been doing that, or convention, festival convention.
Convention.
I
Yeah.
got to get it right. Sorry.
I didn't know either. Actually, just a little fun knowledge is I was running a festival because that's what I inherited. But then I found out that a festival typically is outside and a convention is typically inside.
Uh,
And the majority of our event is inside. So
Festvention, because you're doing, I don't know,
festvention, yeah.
something that makes sense. So that's launching off in October,
Yep.
right? Talk to us a little bit about that. And one of the things that I see Jesse do all the time is you talking about taboos. Like there's certain things that you're pushing limits on things, right?
Yeah.
I've seen you attacked. You know, I've seen like you come under fire for things. I I would have worn my one trick pony shirt
Yeah.
today, which
Yeah.
is one of Jesse's shirts that he gifted me, but it's got holes in it. I need another one.
Hey, I
Um,
get you.
and that came from, you know, it was a comment on InkMaster, right?
Yeah. It was a TV show. They called me a one trick pony because they said all I could draw was cartoons.
So can you tell that story real quick? Because I love that story. And like, so Jesse's on InkMaster, and you're competing, they cast this kind of an insult at you, like you just do one thing,
Right.
right? And I know where it went to when you return to the show, but can you fill in some of the gaps there? You feel comfortable doing that?
I guess I need to understand exactly what you're asking. It's
Well, you
so.
came back and did something very specific. They asked you what you wanted to.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. So I was on InkMaster season 2, and in season 2, it's interesting. On the back end, they were like, "Hey, do whatever you want to do," and of course, I'm going to do what I want to do because that's what I enjoy doing. But then when they edit it down, it's like, "Oh, Jesse keeps doing what he's doing," and then I see people on the back end, they're calling me a one-trick pony and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Wow, I didn't realize that was happening at the time." And then I end up getting kicked off for black and gray realism. And I didn't do a great job. I mean, I definitely wasn't my best tattoo that I had done. But then they asked me to come back for like an all-star season. And within that all-star season, they asked you to, when you came back, you get to pick the challenge. And so rather than coming in, and most people would come in and they'd pick their strength, which was, in my case would be new school. I came back in as a black and gray. So that was like the initial challenge. So we did black and gray, and I ended up redeeming myself and, moving on to get kicked off for doing what I do. So,
I remember watching that clip, and it was like the reaction was like, Jesse, what do you want to do? And it's like portrait, black and gray portrait. It was like the thing that was the opposite direction of, and you'd been like working towards it, right? Like you've been, and I just remember I was like, oh,
oh, well, and the other thing too is on the back end, I never knew I was going back on InkMaster. Like, I was on season 2 and 7. So that was like it was 4 years between the two. And so during that time, being on InkMaster kind of created a scenario where it highlighted all my the things I was good at, but it also put a spotlight on all the things I was bad at. And so essentially when I got back, I just kind of used that opportunity of all the gaps that I had and tried to fill in those gaps. So I practiced a lot more black and gray and color realism. Really interesting thing is when we were in art school, we were doing a lot of that stuff. And I actually had to deprogram myself after art school to kind of not think about that stuff, because it was really hard for me to create out of my whatever side of my brain when I'm trying to use reference and think about reality. So it was like almost using two parts of my brain. And after being in school and using reference for 4 5 years, I had to actually force myself not to look at reference to learn how to draw a hand out of my head again, and stuff, all the stuff out of my head.
kind of had to trust your imagination
Well, and it
more.
really, yeah, you have to pull from that place where you're like, I know what a hand looks like. Why do I need a picture of a hand?
Yeah.
And so now throughout my career, I've toggled back and forth. I'll throw a lot of reference at the beginning and prime my brain, and then put it all away and then draw out of my head, and then maybe bring reference in for color palettes and like light sources and stuff like that. And then there's other times, but I try my best to like not lean on the reference too much
Mm.
because I feel like that kind of steals the I don't know, the fantasy-ish, look that I want to go for. So
Well, it's also like anytime you bring reference in, it's like a reference paper, right? Or research paper. It's going to disrupt flow,
yeah.
right? So the thing is, it's hard to get into flow if you don't know the thing that you're drawing or studying or anything. So what you just said is like you do a lot of maybe work up front and you prime yourself with some images,
Yeah.
and then it's like now I'm going to trust that's kind of in there somehow, and I'm going to draw from that. So
Yeah.
it's I use the example in here of writing your autobiography versus a research paper where one's going to flow and the other's going to be stop and start
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
else. Um, so back up to speed now this October. Talk to us about the convention. I'm really excited to hear about the workshop because this, where I was going with this, the taboo that you're kind of poking in your finger in right now is like to me from the outside, the tattoo world seems kind of like magicians. Like there's secrets and there's trade things that you're not supposed to share, and you have to earn these things. You have to do your apprenticeship and go through this trial by fire. Is that accurate of how things have kind of always been?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's getting a lot more open because of YouTube and stuff like that. And the trade secrets aren't really there anymore. I mean, it's a different world. I mean, and I like it. And a lot of the artists are a lot more willing to share, and they're not, they're all about trying to build each other up, When I got in, it was a lot of bikers and a lot of criminals and stuff like that. And they were just trying to push you down and tell you everything you were doing was wrong. So there's a much better community now. Um, but yeah, I guess that's kind of something I'd like to segue off on as well, is like if you're doing anything, if you're popping your head up, someone's going to try to chop it off. And no matter which direction you go, in social dynamics and politics and art, stuff like that, I've been attacked by every angle of person, but I've been supported by every angle of person as well. So, but yeah, what I'm doing right now, I personally don't think it's anything crazy, as I'm just really trying to stimulate the art side of the Richmond convention. But there are people who are really unhappy about that. They don't want me to bring art in. They want the tattoos and they want it to be tried and true. Um, but yeah, we're bringing a lot of artists in. We've got Greg Simpkins coming in. We've got Kevin Llewellyn coming in. And I don't know if you guys know any of these people, but they're really amazing artists. I mean, we've got Sterling Hunley is going to be painting live. So we've got a lot of amazing artists that are going to be painting live. And they basically do this thing that I created called the Live Art for Charity. And we essentially have them paint all weekend, and then we auction the pieces off on the following week. And then this year, we're giving all the proceeds to Studio 23,
Oh, great.
a local nonprofit that kind of helps people out, who maybe need supplies and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I love Studio 2-3. That's great.
yeah, I think they came from VCU as well.
Yeah, I would be
Yeah.
surprised if they didn't. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and I mean, everything. You've got all sorts of events day and night. You've got some
Yeah.
family-friendly stuff. You've got some not family-friendly stuff.
Yeah.
The things you do kind of later in the evenings. Got a great buzz to it, and I mean, I got to paint next to some of the people I really admire in the
Yeah.
space. Eliza was right next to me.
Lisa, Vanessa Lemon.
Danny was there too.
Danny.
So it was really cool. But talk to us a little bit about the workshop piece of what you're doing, if you can.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to kind of make sure that we get some educational elements within the convention. And so the Monday following the Richmond convention, we're actually going to have 5 presenters. Kevin Llewellyn and Greg Simpkins will be the fine artists presenters. And then we've got 3 tattoo artists presenters as well. And so the way that I'm trying to because I know most people, there's always a struggle. Like in the tattoo world, letting anyone who doesn't tattoo learn from tattoo artists is taboo, right? And so the problem is always trying to get artists into this convention and into the educational side of things without stepping on that line. And so what I did is I kind of separated the presenters. So we have the fine artist presenters that are in the evening, and then the tattoo artists are in the morning. So the tattoo artists can come in and learn in the morning, and then the fine artists can come in halfway through, learn from the fine artists. And then we're going to have a collaborative art mixer. So everybody will be collaboratively
That's
painting. We're going to have color mixing competitions, stuff like that. So we're going to see who can mix up these colors perfectly based off of a swatch. So lots of little fun things. I think it's going to be a really good time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you're really, this is how creativity works. You have these ideas, and I kind of define ideas as the unseen connection between known things. And it's our ability as visual communicators to show people like there's a connection to be made here. There's a bridge. And the adage I kind of use is like, if you build the bridge, you should be able to collect the tolls, like, so if you're the one who does it, like brings them together. So I see you collecting the tolls. I see you're the one who's making these things happen. It's under a kind of this convention venture, which is a business venture. You brought in Ryan Ashley as well.
Ryan's my co-host, and she's awesome.
Yeah.
And she's got a massive draw. I mean, I think she's got a couple million followers, and people love her. She's a really good person.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I want to see if there's anything else specifically that you wanted to talk about, and then I want to open the floor up to the students to ask questions.
Yeah.
Where I'd love to see this conversation go is they're almost literally where you were, some years ago.
Yeah.
And they're looking at an uncertain future, as we did. Things are
As
moving.
As
we are. Things are moving faster than ever. But any kind of thoughts for them? Any other points in your history, your story that you want to share that I fumbled or glossed over?
Well, I do want to step back to the convention real quick, and this is not any me trying to sell anything or anything. It's just me very excited. So I just landed something yesterday. It's called Secret Walls. Have you heard of that?
No.
So they're like this crew that kind of runs around and they have like little art battles and they're tied in with like James Jean and like I mean all the top artists in the world, all the top muralists and everything. But we ended up finally getting them to come to Richmond. So they'll be coming in and we'll have an art competition on Saturday night, which I'm super stoked about. And we literally like locked this in 2 days ago and they're really hard to lock in. And as far as I know, there's no tattoo shop or tattoo convention ever that's had this type of event there. So really excited about that. Love for you guys to come out and check it out.
Just describe that to us. So Secret Walls, I assume that they're doing murals. And like the mural battle, is that kind of
Kinda. So what we'll do is we'll have two massive walls. They'll be up on a stage. You'll have two artists on this side and two artists on that side, and they basically give them like black and white. I don't even know if they give them white. I think it's already white, and they just give them black paint markers. And basically, they give them 90 minutes, and these guys draw as much as they can. These guys draw as much as they can. Got a DJ and a MC, and then we've got the crowd, and then they get the crowd to vote on which one
wow,
wins.
that's fun.
It's really fun. And so we're gonna have Gary Villarreal be drawing. You know Gary?
I don't.
He was painting. Oh no, he didn't paint last year,
Yeah.
but he's an amazing concept artist from Austin, Texas. But we've got all these like really amazing artists. So we're gonna make it the tattoo artist battle the fine artists, which I'm really excited
Oh,
about.
that is cool.
So, because you know, in the art world, I've noticed, you know, not everybody's like this, but I remember going to San Diego Comic Con, and one of the guys was like, "Yeah, man, if you want to get any respect, you got to take the word tattoos off of your website and get all the tattoos off your website." And I was like so offended by that. I was like, what does tattoos have to do with me being an artist or not? You know? And I've caught that a lot throughout the thing. It's like artists not really thinking tattoo artists are artists as well. And I understand that. There's lots of people who are making money off the tattoo world that can't draw their way out of a wet paper bag. But
Well, all the norms have been subverted. Like when you get into like, you could have the same conversation about fine artists versus illustrators versus designers, and
yeah,
where illustration is seen as a dirty word.
yeah,
You're an illustrator. It's like what they mean is that you are taking other people's ideas and you're a wrist, right?
yeah,
And we all know that it's much different than that. So the tattoo world's no different, but we've seen uh, pop culture, we've seen street art become shown in the highest gallery. Like
yeah.
everything that is will not be. Everything, the only constant is change, and these things will continue
Very
to
interesting.
evolve. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's wild. It's
yeah,
so the only way kind of through that is to push and challenge the fringes, like to actually go to the edges and be like, this is where we are. How do we push things forward? And
yeah.
so
And I would say all of those times in my mind have just been out of curiosity
right.
and excited to see something happen that hasn't happened before. If it's already happened, I typically am not interested in it. I'm interested in trying to figure out how we can make something else happen. And it's kind of like that in my art too. It's like if I'm drawing something that's already been drawn before, I'm not interested in it. I'm interested in drawing something that no one's seen before. You know, there's obviously reflections of other people's styles and other things that are happening in the world, but in my mind, I'm trying my best to stretch things as far as I can so that it's still palatable for people to enjoy, but it's also different than everything that's been done up to this point.
Every artist who you all know who's made a name for themselves, as Jesse has pushed into the unknown. They've stepped away from the copying. They've stepped away from the expected. They've stepped away from the norms, and they've challenged something. They brought something back. I think that's a big part of what we do as artists is that we find that novelty, that distinction. We pursue curiosity.
Yeah.
Like that's it for me too. It's like I'm just curious. Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be cool? What if we did this? Why aren't these things happening? So I think if I were to interject an answer to my earlier question, what's the value for you all? It's going to continue to be that novelty, that distinction, and finding your way, because there is no blueprint for any of this. Not for you, not for me, not for anybody else. And you have to cut your own path. So, Jesse, awesome. Anything else before we open up the floor?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm interested in whatever you guys want to talk about.
All right. I know we got some questions out here. Y'all fire away. What's on your minds here?
So just to make it clear, James Jean's not going to be there, but it's called Secret Walls. So Secret Walls is going to be at my tattoo convention on October 18th. So it's going to be the Saturday of that event. And so that particular company, Secret Walls, has done stuff with James Jean and Audrey Kawasaki and like really, really, I mean, they've got their finger on the pulse when it comes to artists. And this year we're going to have Greg Simpkins will be involved in it some capacity, Gary Villarreal. So there's going to be some very talented humans on that stage.
Greg Simpkins, his kind of tag name is Crayola.
Crayola, yeah.
So you've heard of that. And question in the back? Let me frame it just so it's recorded. The question was if there's a big separation between these different worlds of fine art and tattoos and illustration. And the question was, if you were a fine artist and you're interested in tattooing, like kind of how do you start?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first and foremost, you want to present yourself as an artist, and I know that sounds pretty crazy, but I've had a lot of people come into my tattoo shop and say they want to be artists and there's nothing to show that they even enjoy art. So present yourself with art as an artist. Even the stuff, like I know that there's a lot of people that are hesitant to put their art out there because they're not confident or whatever. What you put out now is not going to be as good as what you put out in the future, and then what you put out in the future is not going to be as good as what you put out past that point. So just get everything out that you can right now, make the best portfolio you can, and present that, to the world so that you start getting these clients who maybe like your stuff, and then you can build up from there. But if you want to be a tattoo artist, unfortunately, I think it's very difficult to get in. Um, but my recommendation, at least like with my tattoo shop, is we have an internship program, and we just have our interns come through, and you can get 3 months of just hanging out in a tattoo shop, kind of understanding what it's all about. Um, and then if we have job availability, then we'll typically go through the pool of our interns. A lot of the people that I've interned within my shop, none of them have been cold. It's not like someone randomly walks in with a portfolio and says, I want an internship. Because as I said earlier, talent is one piece of the pie. Attitude, personality, work ethic, those are all really important things. And you can't get those off of someone's portfolio, and you can't get it off of one interview. There's been plenty of times where I've interviewed an artist or a potential receptionist or something like that, and they were awesome. And then 2 months in, they just were the worst ones that I've ever had. So, to make a long story short, I would say you got to start tiptoeing into the tattoo world at some capacity, whether it's an internship, getting tattooed, hanging out with tattoo artists. You just have to start getting into that world.
I want to reframe what Jesse just said a little bit because if I were to ask you as an employer looking to bring somebody in, what are some of the, I mean, you have to understand Jesse's got overhead. He's got, he's got to pay people. He's got, pay for the space, he has resources and the insurance and everything else in between. What are some things that are at risk for you that would make you, I mean, those are the outcomes. Like someone's got a good attitude, the talent and everything else.
Yeah.
But at what cost? What are the variables that you have to consider when you're bringing somebody in?
I have to consider whether they're going to get along with the people that are currently there. I have to consider, how long they're going to be around. I also have to consider there's some people that you give them a bunch of information and then they open up across the street. So it's like, are these people going to be loyal? Are they going to have like uh, the the ethics to kind of like say, hey, I appreciate everything you taught me. I'm going to at least show you the respect of opening up a couple blocks down at least instead of across the street. So there's a lot of variables involved, but I think that I personally would be more interested in having someone who had a good attitude and a good work ethic with a mediocre portfolio than someone who has an amazing portfolio with a bad attitude and no work ethic. So I would say if you have a good attitude and good work ethic and an urge to learn, like I would hire that person in a heartbeat versus, the opposite.
So as you all look for your job opportunities and project opportunities, there's so much of what goes into is like, what do I get out of it? What is for me, right? I just want you to flip and have a little bit of empathy and relatability to the people that you want to work with and work for, and start thinking about like what are their troubled spots, what are their challenges, what limitations do they have? Because it's not abstract. They have very real world limitations with what they do, and when they decide to bring somebody in, they have to consider all of these things, and it goes so much deeper than whether you can draw or you can paint. And I mean, those things are just like that's the price of entry right there.
Right.
You know, if you're talking about our industry. So, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, it's called Secret Walls. Yeah. But I definitely encourage you guys to come for the other things as well if you can. And yeah, I mean anybody in here that wants to go to the convention, it's on me. I'll kick you guys some free weekend tickets.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, you know this is getting posted to
Oh
YouTube.
shit. Shoot.
You can say shit. We're fine.
Shoot.
We're adults here.
No,
Put it
I
no,
mean,
we'll not put it in writing. Can
yeah.
we get a contract?
I mean, hopefully, well, I hopefully I don't have to put it in writing,
Right,
but I
right.
just let me know and we'll get you guys taken care of.
That's
If
that
Sterling vouches for you, I got you.
I can't vouch for these people.
Oh,
So,
okay.
no. No, that's awfully generous of you.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yes.
Probably, I mean, I hate to say it, but probably I what drove me the most was the negative, like people saying that I can't do something or people like pushing against. I mean, I enjoy being in the fringe. I enjoy being on an outcast at some capacity. I mean, obviously I don't want to be completely ousted from society, but I like not being normal. And so when people are essentially saying negative things about me, typically it's because I'm not normal is why they're doing that. So, and you can learn a lot more from your enemies than you can from your friends. The enemies will say the meanest things to you, and from their perspective, it's true. And then you have to kind of sift through that and say, is it true? From your vantage point, because a lot of times people say stuff that's not true. But your enemies will go cut straight to the chase and tell you exactly what's wrong with you or exactly what's wrong with your artwork or whatever. And that's where I feel like I've learned the most. Yeah.
I've had so many times in my career where a door's been, it looks like it's completely shut, sealed, locked, and closed. And it's just how you respond in those moments, like say, okay, or what about this? And like finding workaround. So your art careers will be like that. They will be a lot of doors closed, that things that you think are ivory towers that really are not. And it's that creativity, not just in the things we draw and paint, but in how we live our lives. Like that ability to think about other pathways and other ways around that I think allow people to flourish in business. So
I do also want to say with the whole enemy thing, because I mean, I think nowadays with the internet, it's easy to have people say mean things about you. And I think that there's a saying that I heard one time was basically you could judge people more off of how they react to negative things than they react to positive things. And so I always keep that in mind from my perspective. Like if someone's doing something negative to me, I may be, maybe people will say, yeah, you should punch him in the face and you're completely cool, but you still have to live with the fact that you did that thing. So I usually try to use judo when it comes to like the negativity is like someone will throw negativity at you. You respond to them in the most mature, logical way as you can. And typically that diffuses them. I mean, how do you keep attacking someone who's being very rational? It's hard. So
great point. Question over here.
yeah, I mean, the thing that took me a while to learn is there are so many humans on this planet. It's probably the same thing as like in a relationship. If your relationship with so and so doesn't work, there's a million more. You haven't lost that opportunity. There's so many other opportunities that are available out there. And so the same thing with art and stuff like that, or, the way I look at it is like I do have some people who maybe don't particularly like me as an artist and I just realized that I don't need to push any energy in that direction anymore. It's a waste of time. And I just start pushing in another direction. And it's very easy to do that nowadays because you know, one of the hot topics these days is the gatekeeping thing. It's like back in the days, if you screwed over Rolling Stone magazine or, a record label or something like that, that was it. There's no chance of you ever becoming part of that music world. Nowadays, people are building their little art worlds and their little music worlds just in like these little pods. So you're not missing an opportunity. You're just moving on to the next one, you know? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk with I've got a few lectures to give on how to pivot in situations and things. I don't know that there's a strategy as much as you're kind of aware of where things are conflicted and there's a bottleneck and there's ways of kind of even talking to people sometimes that as Jesse's saying, diffuses things and transfers things over. Sometimes people are in positions of authority and will say things to you to see how you respond. And they might tell you no to see if you've got the grit to persevere or to change or to challenge. Um, I've been in so many situations like that where it's just, what was the lowest low became the highest high. So I'm happy to talk to you about that separately too.
What about that guy that destroyed your painting that one time?
Oh, yeah. I don't,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
At the Illustration Academy, yes. Let me respond because it's kind of off of my thing here. I just would say that, business relationships is just like personal relationships. Don't be a psycho, Like, that's one of those things where if people tell you no, sometimes they definitely mean no. And it's when I'm talking about like pivoting, it's not like you keep pushing in a direction and you'll just will them down. That's not a pleasant way to be. That's not going to yield anything positive. It's not a conflict or tension. It's just like it's a proper response. It's an educated response. It's a thoughtful, not emotional response. And it's one of those things where you might see another avenue or application that people just don't see. That your ability to kind of see things differently is I think the tool. So yeah,
Can I pop in?
yeah.
So when I moved to Richmond and I was tattooing out of my house, I wanted to get into a tattoo shop. And I took my portfolio to every tattoo shop in Richmond, Colonial Heights, and Petersburg. And every single one of them said no, they weren't interested. And then I went back, tattooed out of the house for another 6 months. And then I went back and did it all again. And I got rejected again. And then I did another 6 months, went back and finally landed a job. So I would say that persistence is attractive as long as it's not pushy. So if you show up and if I called you every day, you'd be like, oh, creepoid. But if I called you like once every 6 months, and it depends on the relationship you have with that person. Some people you could call every day and they're like, why didn't you call me twice? But like, reading the situation and saying, okay, I'm going to go hit the drawing board again, get a little bit better, fill in those gaps, and then try again. So,
And that's huge, what Jesse just said, because I found myself in that situation a number of times where someone will give you suggestions and advice, and you can choose to take that advice and suggestions or not. But if you go back to, say, the same art director 6 months down the road and you've actually applied what they've said, I mean, that's flattering and it's made your work better and you've changed. You're somebody you can be worked with,
it's
right?
very attractive
Yeah.
for a business owner. And the crazy thing is I had people come in, they show me their portfolio, like rip me apart, tell me what I can do to be better. And then I tell them and I say, hey, come back in 6 months. Let me see how far you've gotten. To this day, nobody has come back in 6 months.
Mm.
And if they did, then I would talk to them in 6 months and I would watch their journey and eventually I would have a relationship of sorts with them. And I'd be like, this person is working and hard and they're showing their work ethic there. So I personally like that persistence. I don't see it often. So
If I can interject, and this is Jesse's time, I don't want to make a story about, but he mentioned Rolling Stone, so that was my dream client. And long story short, they closed the book in my face in the office and said, "Thanks for coming in." And I said, "Thanks." He goes, "All right, tell me where you're trying to go with your work." And I realized in that moment that the person who'd opened the door for me I was ripping off their work, Gary
Oh
Kelly.
yeah, yeah, I remember.
And I said, honestly, I think my work was too close to Gary Kelly. And he said, sit back down, we can talk. And we talked. They were going to give me a job. And I said, I had sent them drawings of mine. And they're like, you sent us these drawings a year ago, and they're so personal. We had them up on our bulletin board, but you never sent us anything else. Do that. I said, well, would you mind if I went back and did new samples and sent them to you again? And I did that, and it took a few weeks to do it. My first major project with Rolling Stone came from them hiring me to do what I do in that exact scenario, where like literally like close the portfolio in my face and like, thanks for coming in. And that's a pivot to I'm hearing what you're saying, I have awareness, and I'm reacting. So there's so many things. If you're in a relationship with somebody, like a personal relationship, same thing. You always do this thing and you're doing it wrong. It's like, I'm going to change. But it's not appreciated, you know?
Or if you wanted to get into a relationship with someone and you tried and they said no, and you really wanted to be with them, if you tried again in 6 months, just kind of like, mildly pushing into it, you're going to be on the radar more often. So hopefully in a good way,
Yeah.
no creepy way,
No psychos.
no psychos.
Yes.
I mean, I always try to push people towards having a distinct style and trying to help them move in that direction, but it's not a prerequisite for me. Like I would say, you know, between the talent, the style, all that stuff, and then the work ethic and the personality, I probably would give the work ethic and the personality like 70%, and then the other 30% to talent and style and stuff like that. It might even be less than that. I would say probably 80%. I need people around me who I can count on, who are going to work and try and just be good people. That's what I need first and foremost. The talent and all that stuff typically is relatively easy to nurture. I can teach anyone how to tattoo. And if people are willing to learn, I can teach anyone to be a better artist, and I can guide people towards a style and stuff like that. But you can't do that's impossible to do. I've had some people that are like, they just don't have any work ethic or anything, and I can't do anything with them. They're just not willing to learn. So,
Same thing as a teacher. I can't teach somebody who's not passionate.
right.
I can't help them. Right. Any other questions? Let's make these. We got to wrap up here in just a second.
Um, I don't know the direct answer to that. I just can't stop. Like I just move and move and move and move. And if I hit a wall, I just kind of go pivot and go try to hit another wall. Like, I'm just always moving and also I think, realizing that someone else's opinion of you is not who you are. If they don't like you or they don't think you're talented enough or whatever, that doesn't mean that's who you are. That's who they think you are. You just have to be confident enough to believe that you are who you are and that you have what it takes to work in these environments or be a part of this business or do these things. If you believe all that, it doesn't matter what anybody else says.
And part of it too is taking an assessment of where you are, because sometimes you're getting advice that's good advice. And I'm not saying your rejections are good rejections, but there's been so many times where people told me things like, I see that. I'm not where I need to be, and this is where I want to be. And that's again kind of back to that perseverance and coming back and maybe finding another window. So we had one more question over here, then we'll kind of wrap things up.
We're looking for those attributes that I was talking about earlier, good attitude and someone who's a hard worker, because those are the two attributes that I think that will take person, uh, you know, will will have if I'm going to bring someone into the tattoo world, I want them to I want to know that they're actually going to do something with that with the time that I put into them. And someone who has a good work ethic and a good attitude is going to go further than someone who's just like, yeah, I'm interested in tattooing, but I don't really want to put in the work or whatever. So I would say, our internship is kind of to help the people, the interns who are coming in, kind of get a taste of what a tattoo shop is like, but then also for us to get a taste for what the interns are like for a potential job. Yeah.
All right. So in conclusion, with Jesse's very kind offer, I think what I can do is I'm just going to get a copy of the names of people who want to go. And
Perfect.
I'll send it over, and
Yeah.
you have on the guest list or whatever.
Email addresses would be nice.
Email addresses.
Yeah. It's October 17th through the 20th. So 17th, 18th, 19th. And then the educational thing is on the 20th. So
Yeah, we can answer the
do
details.
you want us to switch the dates?
Yeah.
Oh. We got you.
All right. Well, hey, I thank you all for your thoughtful questions. I want to thank Jesse for, like, again, he came in on his own. There's no incentive other than just wanting to spend some time with you all, and we got to catch up a little bit. Never get to do
I
that
was getting
enough.
paid.
Oh, I thought you were paying to be here. I thought this was a promotional spot. But just want to say thank you very much for your time and your insight, and yeah, just really cool to hear more of your story that I didn't even know about. So,
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right, Jesse Smith. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
It's awesome.